This is my coming out story. I'm coming out as a blind person who can't see. I'm sorry. I hope that does not hurt your feelings. So what I want to talk about is the stigma behind people that are blind and visually impaired. And the stigma I find is twofold. Now what do I mean by the stigma is twofold? Well, there's the stigma from the side that someone who is blind or legally blind, which means that they have less than 10 degrees of peripheral vision in their good eye, is somewhat legally blind. The stigma is that if they use a white cane, people are going to think that they're weak and vulnerable. So that's the stigma from the side of the person going through the vision loss. Then there's the stigma from the side of the general public who see someone who is using a white cane, or they have the dark glasses and the white cane, and they automatically think that that person needs to be rescued, needs to be helped, is incapable of doing things for themselves. So that's why I say the stigma is twofold. I was once a self-hating blind person. This is my term. This is what I've called myself. This is what I call people I know that are legally blind and should be using a white cane that don't. And if they're watching this video, they know who I'm talking about. And they can holler at me later for it. I don't care. So I have RP. It's a hereditary eye disease. Born with it. Nothing we can do about it. I have night blindness as part of the RP, which I can't see in the dark. Or I can't see very well in the dark. I can see lights. And I can see what the light hits, if that makes sense. So if you think of a street light and the way it comes down, the light comes down from it and it creates that circle in the ground. Anything inside that circle I can see. If someone's standing before that circle of light, I can see their shadow or their outline in front of the light. But if they were standing behind the light, I wouldn't be able to see them. So that's the extent of my night blindness. So this is basically a rant video. So I wasn't diagnosed with RP until my early 20s. So I had a normal childhood, or at least as normal as it could be. I just thought everyone couldn't see in the dark like I could. I thought that was normal. When I turned 16, I got my driver's license, and when I was 14, I got my hunting license. So, I did all the normal things. Well, somewhat normal. I don't know if every kid got their hunting license, but I wanted to, so I did. I had my driver's license until I was... Well, let me step back. I drove until I was 21, and then I found that my eyes were starting to get worse, so I stopped driving, but I kept my license, and I turned in my license when I turned late 30s, 38-ish, 37, 38, which was fun, because I went to the DMV, and I walked in with my girlfriend, and I had my white cane in hand, and I walked up to the receptionist at the DMV, and I stood right in front of her, and I had my white cane right in front of her. I stared her right in the eye, and I said, I want to renew my driver's license. The look on her face was the look of a deer in headlights. She just kind of went, and then I just had a big smile, and I said, no, I'm just joking. But it was a fun experience. So I never started using a white cane until I was about 38. Yeah, I'd say about 38 is when I started carrying it with me. I wouldn't say I was using it correctly. I did have my O&M instructions, which is orientation and mobility, which basically means that an orientation and mobility trainer came, walked with me, showed me how to use the white cane, doing the 2-tap, doing the slide, and made sure, that I knew how to use it. And the reason why I didn't use the white cane is because I was a self-hating blind person. I did not want people to know that I was visually impaired. I did not want people to feel sorry for me. I tried to do everything that I could so that people didn't know that I was visually impaired unless I told them that I was visually impaired. So my friends knew, my family knew, colleagues that I worked closely with would know because I told them, but anyone else in the office wouldn't have known unless I told them. I didn't hide the fact that I was visually impaired, but I didn't outright tell people that I was visually impaired. So when did I choose to not be a self-hating blind person? I still love that term. So I would say in my late 30s, while at work, and I work in a call center environment, technical support environment, and anyone else that knows that type of environment knows that it's all gray cubicles and usually gray flooring, gray walls, very, very drab, very, very plain looking. And what I used to do before I started using my cane at work is I did this technique called trailing. And what trailing is basically I would stick close to the walls to my right, and I would have my hand out and kind of just slide my hand again along the wall. So if anyone now that sees this video and sees me doing that, now you know what I'm doing. So I would do this trailing technique so that I could follow the wall to where I had to go. And I would memorize, where my desk was and stuff like that. But when everything's gray and you have poor depth perception and color contrast, you're not good with that, especially when it's like gray on gray. That didn't always work. So in my late 30s, whenever I would leave the office to go into another part of the building or something, I found myself having near misses of walking into people. Which, in one way, it's scary, because you don't know what will happen if you actually hit someone. Trust me, I have lots of interesting stories that I could tell. So I found myself that I was near missing walking into people. I was having a hard time going from light to dark because of my eyes. I didn't wear sunglasses because I found I could never find the right type of sunglasses that would help, with that going from light to dark. Or if I was inside and it was too bright, I always found sunglasses too dark, so I didn't wear them. So just the stories going through my head. And then one day at work, I was working in the lab. I was working in the lab late one night. And I was coming from the lab and I was going back to my desk. And when I was walking back to my desk, instead of doing the trailing, because I had my laptop with me and I was carrying my laptop in front of me, and anyone that I work with that still works in the same office will remember this because it was hard to forget. I was walking along the wall, following the wall like I normally do. But the day before, or that morning, they were shuffling filing cabinets around. Gray filing cabinets that were the same color as the wall filing cabinets, and I didn't see it because there wasn't enough contrast. And this filing cabinet had to be at least 4 feet tall. So when I was walking, I had my laptop roughly in front of my stomach, which would have been about, 6 foot, so about 3 feet, and like 3 feet from the ground. So it was nice and aimed on this filing cabinet as I was walking towards it. and I was going at a pretty good clip, and I hit the filing cabinet. And when I hit the filing cabinet, I hit it so hard that it tilted over on a 45-degree angle, but it didn't fall over. It came back towards me, and all you heard was a bang throughout the whole office. Embarrassing, yes. Was it the last time I did something like that? No. But it was very funny because when it happened, if you've ever watched shows with gophers, all you see was these heads pop up from behind the cubicles. So everyone was popping up, and they just looked like little gophers, like, what's going on? What's going on? It was funny. It was embarrassing and funny at the same time. But I've learned from that experience and many other experiences that you just laugh things off unless you get really hurt. I've never really gotten hurt from any of my accidents, which is good. But I've become very, very cautious since then. So since that episode, I started carrying my cane around with me, my white cane. I used it more as a walking stick, but I did have it with me so that it was more of an identification so that people could see that I was visually impaired. I still didn't use it around my office. I would come into work and I'd just fold up my cane and I'd put it on my desk, and if I was walking around the office or was going out to the washroom, then I wouldn't use it. But if I went anywhere else in the mall, because our office is attached to a mall, I would use it at that point. But it took me a long time to realize and come to the fact that I was at that point of vision loss that I needed to use a white cane. And that's very hard for someone who is going through vision loss to do, because as I mentioned earlier, in our minds, the people that are going through the vision loss, we see the white cane as more of a crutch than a tool. And we have to learn to accept that this is a tool to help us cope independently within our environment and our lives. So once someone who's blind or visually impaired, I mean, if you lost your vision at a young age, then you would have a cane very, very early in your life. But for someone who has their vision until later in life, and then they lose it and they have to, it's either curl up into a ball and stay home and, oh me, oh my, I have a disability, or it's find a way to cope and to find a way to move on with life. And that's what I did. That's when I decided, I'm no longer going to be a self-hating blind person. I'm going to accept that I am losing my sight, and I'm going to continue on. So, I hope you liked my story. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave them down below, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks. Have a great day.